Welcome to Wiggys University. Since the purpose of these videos is to educate people, I think university reference is probably very good. Now, I've been talking all about chopped staple fiber and continuous filament fiber for years. I had to go to a home sewing store in Grand Junction to get some chopped staple fiber because I don't have any of it in the factory. And this is chopped staple fiber batting. When I came into the industry, it would have a very crisp surface to it because after they combed out the fibers and created the web, they would spray resins on it. Nowadays, they don't spray resins on it any longer. They take two fibers, one that's heat set at 475 degrees, and the other that's heat set at 200 degrees. And the 200 degree fiber is what's known as a low melt fiber, and it goes between the little fibers and causes them to stick together. And you wind up with a softer product. One of the problems with this is if you have a garment or a sleeping bag that's got low melt chopped staple fiber in it, and you put it in the trunk of your car, and it's a lot of sun beating down on the car, the trunk gets up to 300 degrees, the low melt fiber gets liquefied, and then when you pull it out and it cools down, it resets, and you don't have a sleeping bag any longer. This is something that 3M found out about when they were first marketing their Thinsulate Light Loft, which was strictly chopped staple polyester fiber. Now, I've referred to Primaloft using a very fine denier fiber. According to the patent, it's a half a denier, and it's obviously very difficult to see, but this fiber is about a 4.5 or 5.5 denier fiber. And the difference between the two fibers is this one being heavier is stronger. So anyway, they formed this web, and this is what you wind up with. And this was about, I don't know, 3 or 4 ounces per square yard. And you can see how much strength it has, or the fact that it has no strength. And that is the reason you have to put it into a quilting machine, because what you put on either side of the fiber is what gives it its strength and holds it together. By the same token, when you get to continuous filament fiber, and I think you can see the filaments, they run from side to side. And if you try and pull them, you've got all this fiber. And if you look at the strength of the fiber, you can't tear it up. And that's the reason that it's adaptable to the lamination process. Which you see here. This is a 2.5 ounce. This is a 15 ounce. You can see it's just, I once calculated how much of the fiber goes into one super light bag. And the individual filaments, it's in the neighborhood of 8 million filaments. And these are 4.5 or 5.5 denier fibers, and maybe you can see that. But it's an immensely strong material. And I've told people that if you took this and fed it into the axle of a semi going 100 miles an hour down the road, it would eat up the axle. Plain and simple. That's how strong it is. Now I'm going to show you something else about this fiber. When you put it into water, I'm getting it really saturated here. And you squeeze it out. And now you lay it out. It has lost probably 50% of its thickness. And that's the nature of chopped staple fiber. Now I'm going to take the continuous filament product and do the same thing. And its resilience is substantially better. The other thing is, this fiber is going to trap and hold the moisture. This construction doesn't. And that's the reason that when you have a lamellite insulated product and it gets wet, it doesn't take very long and all the moisture in it just dissipates because of the heat that comes out of your body. And the more often this gets subjected to water, the less resilience that you have. Whereas with this product, it doesn't matter how many times it's subjected to water. The resilience is permanent. It's always coming back. Now, I want to show you a couple of jackets. This is the North Face thermoball jacket. The thermoballs are essentially this fiber. Somehow, mechanically, it's turned into these little balls. And I don't know how it happens. I've never seen the process. And that is what is inside every one of these quilted pockets. Now, we know that quilt stitching reduces insulation. Here is a picture taken a year ago by the company president that produces the continuous filament fiber. And the temperature was about 40, 45 degrees. And this is thermal imaging. And you can see how red this is, which is indicative of where all of the heat is going. And that is, it's going away from him and through the garment and out. So you now understand what is known as conductive heat loss. And I'll go into it a little bit further. Here is a picture of the Wiggy Barren Grounds parka that was taken, 15 minutes later. And you can see how dark it is. And that's because the heat from Ken's body was not coming through the materials. specifically the insulation. And this is the garment that he was wearing. This has the L6 insulation in it. And on a 40-degree day, it would be much too much to wear. According to North Face, they don't give in English the weight of the fiber that's in the garment, but they have a wonderful picture of Meru, which is a mountain in the Himalayas in India, at latitude 30 degrees, 52.5 north, 79 degrees, 156 east. And it's a big mountain, probably 20,000 foot mountain. And the suggestion is that this garment is somehow going to keep you warm if you go up there. That's what's known as an old wives' tale. Here is a garment that I got made by, I thought it was Helly Hansen at first because it looked like HH, but it's really Under Armour. And their label says that this has got adaptable to any cold. And this has chopped staple fiber like this. And I mean, that's a stretch to think that this is good for any cold. Maybe if they're referring to you having a cold and you're in your house, you put this on and it'll keep you warm. But again, it's bogus. Simply bogus. Now, when I refer to this as conductive heat loss, right now I'm wearing a sweater against my skin surface. My skin surface is 91 degrees. The wool that's touching my skin surface is absorbing that 91 degree heat. And it's moving through the fabric to the outside. Since wool does not ever get to the actual temperature of the source, it continues to absorb. And it's continually conducting heat away from me. Now, if I put on one of these garments, this fabric is touching the wool. So it is going to absorb the heat from the wool. And then it's going to transfer that heat via conduction to the fiber on the inside, and that's going to transfer the heat to the fabric on the outside. So you have a steady conductive flow taking place. There's nothing to break it up. And the essence of insulation is to actually stifle that from happening. And these products don't do that. So when I say that these garments are good for Key West in Florida, it's because they're taking the heat that your body's generating on an 80-degree day and they're conducting it away from you, making you cooler. So that's where their purpose is, to be used in a very warm environment. You go up to New England states right now with the temperatures between 0 and 30 below 0, you don't want to be wearing this. You're going to lose all that heat via conduction. Now, a lot of people have asked me about dressing for the cold and what do you wear over the fishnets? Well, the first thing that you really have to understand about the fishnet material is it is a spacer between your skin surface and the next layer. And the heat coming out of your body is in these holes. And it's kind of trapped there because heat attaches itself to objects. And it's attaching to the nylon. What you wear over this has to be loose fitting. You can't wear anything that's tight fitting. What the North Face says is in their literature, jackets are fit close to the body to provide a wide range of motion. Well, when you wear something that's close to the body, it inhibits your ability to move. And if you have several layers on, particularly knitted layers, everything kind of locks into each other. It's like an electric static attachment, and it inhibits your movements. So you want something that's slick, like nylon. If you wore this against your skin and my jacket liner over it, you'd be able to walk around all day long at 35 degrees, without feeling much cold. Not that this is heavily insulated, but it stops that heat movement, which is what you want to accomplish. So, this is the first time I've taken notes. Now, the other thing that I wanted to talk about was Gerry Cunningham. Gerry Cunningham was the guy that started a company called Gerry Outdoor Products, I believe in the late 40s, early 50s, when he got out of the Army in Denver, Colorado, and he was the kingpin of the industry for many, many years. I consider Gerry the grandfather of the outdoor industry. And he wrote a little booklet called How to Keep Warm. When I came in contact with him and his company, I used to take hands full of these booklets, and when I was calling on manufacturers of outerwear, I'd give it to them to read so they could understand how to stay warm. How many of them read it is, who knows? Probably not many. But he discusses heat production, heat loss, conductive, convection, evaporation, and the biggest thing that he stresses is evaporation. And he's one of the first guys that I ever heard of talking about fishnet long johns. He talks about the heat equation, which is trying to balance the loss of heat with the production of heat, which is very, very difficult to do. And he talks about the science of clothing, and he's always getting back to ventilation. And so, for me to say you got to get rid of all the moisture that you're generating as quickly as possible is not new information that I came up with. It's information that I've acquired over the years from people that preceded me. And it's really, it's like the kid that's 14 years old that knows more than his father. He gets to be 28 or 29 years old, and he comes to the conclusion that his father knows an awful lot. And so But that hasn't held true in the outdoor industry. That's how they are. You know. So anyway, so this is where I've gotten a lot of my information. I've reproduced a lot of this, which is on the website. If you go to the home page, when you scroll down below the picture of me, there's a story, How to Keep Warm. And it's more lengthy than his. I've put in a lot more information because there's been a lot more to come about over the years. But I'm very grateful that Gerry existed before I did. I'm also very happy to have known him personally. We also had one other thing in common, aside from cold weather stuff. He had a sailboat that he kept down in the Sea of Cortez, and I had my own sailboat that I kept in New York Harbor. And when he gave me permission to use all of this information, I gave him a couple of my Nautilus sleeping bags to use on his boat. So he got to use Lamilite in his later years. All I can offer at this point is, if I've raised some questions for you, don't hesitate to give me a call. I'll be happy to answer the questions. Before I go, Cookie, come on over here. You got to have my trusty assistant. Come on, baby. Oh, she's been busy taking notes over in the corner. Thank you. Have a happy new year.